Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this speech on June 26, 2025, a day designated to commemorate the International Day Against Illicit Drug Trade and drug abuse across the globe. It's very important that we use this opportunity, as it is designated for, to raise awareness on the state of not just the illicit drug trade, not just the crime, but its impact on our society, on our communities, on our nation, with particular focus on the West African sub-region, which is where, as an organization, WABHARM Foundation operates and hopes to expand. The theme for this year, however very interesting, is that the evidence is clear and that we should invest in prevention and break the cycle. That is the theme from the United Nations for this year's commemoration of the International Day Against Illicit Drug Trafficking and Drug Abuse. However, as an individual with over 30 years in the substance misuse field, and as the head of an organization, the West Africa Behavioral Health Addiction and Recovery Management Foundation, WABHARM, and the West Africa Behavioral Health Addiction and Recovery Support Services, WABAS, both in Nigeria and Ghana, can't but find it difficult to challenge this year's theme from an African context, especially from a West African context, when we say the evidence is clear that we should invest in prevention. Unfortunately, the war against drug abuse has been going on now for over 50 years. And in this part of the world, in West Africa especially, we have adopted this war against drug and has followed the Western world in the criminalization of substances. While we're doing that, we do not have the resources that the Western world who decide to declare war on drugs have. We do not think about our ability to police our borders. Unfortunately, the little resources we've had, especially within the West African ECOWAS countries, have been mainly towards supply reduction. In that essence, fighting drug trafficking and criminalizing drug users, which is a big agenda of the war against drug. How has this fared for the past 50 years? Even in rich Western countries, we've had the resources to do this. The United States have invested billions of dollars in the war against drugs, targeting their South African counterparts. 50 years on, where is the United States today in this war on drugs? Are they winning? Are there any evidence that the war on drugs is making any positive impact on the people of the United States? Since President Trump came into power, we have seen the issue of fentanyl come up in the trade war against their neighbor Canada. These are rich, powerful countries. And we have seen a devastating increase and prevalence in the use of opioids in the Western world, especially the United States and Canada. When we say devastating opioids use, please, I need us to really understand and emphasize the word devastating, as it's not only devastating communities, families, but the country at large. Hence, fentanyl become a big issue as part of the Trump's trade tariff as a bargaining chip. Now, enough said about the Western world. Let's come back home. We have followed the Western world as Africans and as signatory to all the UN treaties relating to drug abuse, drug trafficking. But can we really say we have invested in prevention? Emphatically, the answer is no, which is very unfortunate. What we have invested, the little resources we have, is mainly on supply reduction and criminalizing drug users. Even funding for our drug enforcement agencies, for example, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency in Nigeria and the Narcotic Commission in Ghana, are primarily law enforcement agencies, focusing on not just battling the supply of drugs across porous borders, but also tasked with reducing the demand for drugs from the population. And this is where the investment in prevention has failed, because little or nothing has been done in funding preventative services, in training the local workforce, in the government collaborating with NGOs and CSOs. Even the NGOs themselves are subjected to begging and looking for foreign organizations for grants and handouts. And we all know that most of these handouts comes with strings attached. Majority of the handouts we get from the EU, from the US aid, okay, which no longer exists or has been cancelled by the Trump government, are mainly focused on policies and on preventing supply, disrupting the supply. So most of the donations goes to the law enforcement agencies to help them in catching, arresting, detecting drug traffickers. How has this helped the ordinary family, ordinary communities? I'm not going to take us back for too long, but I want us to reflect 10, 15 years ago in West Africa. Is the prevalence of drug use among our youth, is it near the same? You know what the answer is. If back then it was 1 out of 10 families that would acknowledge having or knowing someone who is abusing or dependent on drugs. Today, if a survey was done, it will be 7 or 8 out of 10 families that have either one person in their family, within the family, one person within their community or society that is struggling with substance abuse or dependency. This is our reality. There are more drugs in circulation now, and we tend to follow the trends of the drugs. We are not focused on the individuals, on the families, on the root causes of drug use by individuals. While we spend so much money in addressing drug trafficking for the past 50 years and has yielded no positive impact on the community, it has not reduced the prevalence of drug use. Our communities are flooded with different kinds of drugs. Every year, a new drug draws attention in the media. In Ghana, this year, is another opiate called Red. Sometime back, I think last year, it was Tramadol. In Nigeria, we are talking of Kolos, and we are talking of other synthetic cannabis that has caused so much devastation within our very young population. How long are we going to continue our government going to act like trees? For God's sake, even trees, if they are in an unfavorable environment, they develop roots and extend those roots far away to tap on resources that can sustain them. Our leaders are human. Our policymakers are humans. Why can we not adapt? Just like the tree adapts with its roots and search for nutrition as far wide as possible, even though the main tree itself still stands in one place, but it's extended its roots like tentacles. But we are stuck in still doing things the Western way, without thinking about our culture, without thinking about our diversity, and without tailoring some of these policies to our individual communities and carry people along. Majority of funding still goes to law enforcement agencies. And ridiculously, we expect law enforcement agencies to deliver demand reduction, to deliver treatment services for people who are committing crime by using illicit drugs. That is a crime. For God's sake, we don't need a rocket scientist to say we have failed so far. And this year's theme about the evidence being clear that investing in prevention works does not hold water in this part of the world unless we change, unless we re-strategize, unless we stop measuring our successes, especially successes of the drug enforcement agencies, except we stop measuring their successes by the amount of arrests and drugs they confiscate annually. Because if that is a decent and a realistic parameter for measuring success of NDLEA, whom I agree they are doing a fantastic job in arresting and thwarting drug traffickers, and the Narcotic Control Commission in Ghana. But they are doing well at what they are designated to do. They are law enforcement agencies. They are doing well at reducing trafficking. But how much of this trafficking results in reduction in drug availability in our community? How many? Why are drugs so much available everywhere, despite that every year the media goes on a tangent without doing their research and praise drug law enforcement agencies for the big arrests they make, the number of arrests they make? But why are we not looking at our young persons, our families who are suffering? Why is nobody looking at individual families with 1, 2, 3 of their wards' children? A wife worried about the husband's addiction to one drug or the other. A mother carrying the hurt and the pain of an addicted son or daughter over the years. Why is that not important for us? Why is it not important for us to measure some of these life tragedies? Not to talk of deaths among young persons, male and female. I mean, drug-related deaths. Increased crime rate. Because the correlation between crime and drug use is evident. We know it, we see it. Both trigger crimes and organized crime. The healthcare industry, our hospitals, especially our mental health facilities, are inundated with individuals with drug-induced psychosis and other alcohol or drug-related problems that has affected their organs. It's a reality, and yet most of these places are underfunded. Our mental health facilities, our mental health hospitals are underfunded. Training for a healthcare professional to deal with individuals with drug and alcohol co-occurring disorder is non-existent. Workforce across the sub-region is at the lowest level. No university, no college, no institution, despite the fact that drug abuse and drug dependency has become an epidemic in our region, no institution provides adequate training to develop a workforce in response to the reality that we face every day. How then can we claim or walk under this thing that there is evidence that if we invest in prevention? How? We have only invested in fighting crime, the criminal aspect. I want to make a direct appeal to the President of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I admire his intellect and I praise his government for the changes despite the hardship Nigerians are feeling right now. But the time is now to reconsider and review our strategies. Families in Nigeria are suffering from drug-induced health, social, and economic problems. You cannot divorce the terrorism in Nigeria from drugs and drug trafficking. They are two sides of the coin. We must review our demand reduction strategy. It is not working. We must invest in prevention and treatment. Treatment works. And I'm making the same appeal to President John Dramani Mahama, a very suave, articulate, and dynamic president of Ghana. You are back for a purpose. You are back on a mission. Let's make this work. Let's redirect our investment into prevention and treatment. Let's reconsider the strategy. If the strategy of law enforcement agencies providing both supply reduction and demand reduction has not worked for over 50 years in advanced countries, Your Excellencies, it will not work now. It hasn't changed over the years. It has gotten worse. There are more drugs in our community. And for our NGOs and CSOs concerned about drug abuse, drug dependency, it is time for us as well to step back and stop following the cloud of drug trends. Oh, when it's tramadol, you look for a guest speaker to come and talk about tramadol. Now that it's red, you want to get a guest speaker to come and talk about red. Next year is going to be something else, and you're going to look for a speaker to come and raise awareness about that particular drug. We cannot continue in that pattern. The drugs are not the problem. It is about how we educate the individuals. It is how we educate our people. It is how we empower our young people to have facilities where they can get information without stigma or label. Right now, their teachers are other drug users in the ghettos, in schools. We're in an era where universities do not even welcome NGOs to come and do advocacy work in their university. Meanwhile, there are drug problems in universities. But because they prefer to keep the drug situation in secret so they won't be labeled, you can't work with them. So let's move away from following the trends of red is what is trending now, and then we're all going to talk about red. Can we keep our focus on the human beings, the individuals, the families suffering? Can we, like the UN thing is talking about, invest in prevention, invest in evidence-based treatment, invest in training people at different levels, from support workers to therapists to counselors to psychologists to general practitioners to even psychiatrists. We need training, we need workforce development. Between Nigeria and Ghana, I've come across doctors, psychiatrists whose knowledge around substance use management is poor, could be better. Not a fault of their own, but the training, the resources are not there to aid the knowledge. While it's very good and encouraging to encourage individuals who are ex-users, but we can't depend and rely on them working with young persons without providing them with training, peer training. Their own understanding of the drug lifestyle is unique to them. No two person experience drug use the same way. They cannot use their own experience as a parameter to help someone else. They need more training, they need more knowledge. I am appealing to everyone, to all stakeholders, everyone who is responsible for designing our policies on the issue of drug and alcohol epidemic in West Africa. I am appealing. I know funds are scarce, but it's time to start thinking of PPPs, public-private partnership. It's time to start thinking about moving demand reduction right away from law enforcement agencies into communities, partnering with healthcare services, social welfare organizations, like it's done in other countries. We can't continue to do the same old thing and expect a new result. It's not going to work. And our data collection and collation is extremely poor. If we are going to break the circle, if we are going to break the circle of failure, if we are going to break the circle of criminality, poor health, breakdown in families, we must accept that what we have been doing could be better, that we could do better. Ministries who are responsible for NDLEA and responsible for Narcotic Commission must sit down and re-strategize. Otherwise, we can't break that cycle because we are not yet at the stage where we accept that, listen, we could have done better over the years. We are still struggling. And things are getting worse, not better, when it comes to drug addiction and drug problems within our community, our society, and our countries. The time is now. Otherwise, this is going to get worse. I pray we don't get to situations like in the United States where they have a whole street or a whole population in an area where drug is openly used, where you see people walking and standing like zombies. If we are not careful, we are heading that way. The situation is alarming. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be reined in. We must work with the communities. We must work with faith-based organizations. We have to carry this campaign, this prevention campaign, from the office to the ghetto, to churches, to mosques, to the markets, to offices, to workplaces. Our healthcare industries, our healthcare professionals themselves are facing problematic substance use or abuse in relation to their job. How long are we going to stick our head in the sand and wish this to go away? It's not going to go away. If I sound frustrated, I am, because I know we have the human resources. I know we can gather the will, even if the financial resources are scarce. But there are ways. Let's put heads together on the table. Let's come together and Africanize our strategy instead of waiting for international funding, global funds, OSIWA. And when these fundings are not coming, the NGOs die down, they quiet down. We can't continue to do that. I am hoping and praying that by the same time next year, I'll be reporting again in my speech, hopefully, about the changes, about the efforts made by these organizations and these countries that I have mentioned, that they've heard through me the cries of ordinary West Africans, ordinary Nigerians, ordinary Ghanaians, ordinary families who lack the resources to take their kids or their wards or husbands or wives or family members to rehabilitation centers. And we must note, rehabilitation centers are not panaceas. If our community is still inundated with drugs, these individuals go back to their normal environment that is crawling with different kind of drugs and freely available and cheap for that matter, because a lot of drugs stops here now. The Europeans are smart enough, the Americans are smart enough, they fund us to stop the drugs from coming over to them. So most of these drugs are staying here. Most of the drug busts are drugs that are going out of West Africa. How about the drugs that are coming in? Our borders are as porous as a sieve. And for years, we've not been able to tighten these borders. Our prisons are overflowing with young people, individuals, with drug use related offenses. How has that solved our problem? These are young people that we can get off the drugs, make them productive citizens, taxpayers. So this is an appeal and a time for us to search our conscience and say, enough is enough. We must love our people. We must love our children. It's not only the poor that is afflicted by this menace of drug abuse and drug dependency. The rich, the influential, everyone. It cuts across board. Drug abuse is not the respecter of status or wealth. And secretly, you all know it. Lots of politicians out there have children, extended family members afflicted by this problem. It's knocking on your doors. You know it. You live with it. So if it's knocking on your doors and it hurts you so much, you see a family member deteriorate so much. Now imagine ordinary citizens without resources, struggling to make ends meet, watch their son, their daughter, or partners deteriorate so bad, we must do something about this. And yes, we can do something about it. And I hope you will do something about it. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to this speech on the International Day to commemorate illicit drug use, drug trafficking, and criminality. May God bless West Africa, may God bless our nation. Thank you.